Hey guys, Off the Mic Sports Network here, another edition of Off the Top Rope. So listen, I've made no secrets about the AEW women's division, how poorly managed it has been really since Mercedes Moné showed up there. They did a good job of getting Mariah May over, but Mariah May is going to leave. She didn't show up at the show. A lot of people thought she would. She's not. I think she's parked. I think her contract's going to expire. She's going to show up in WWE and in NXT, maybe on the main roster. I doubt she would show up on the main roster, but I think she's going to be on WWE television probably by, summer or fall. And, listen, more power to her. I think it's the right move. She got her title win, she got her push, she got the fuck out of there. And, it wasn't a good title run for her, but hey, at least she got pushed to the top of this division and beat Toni Storm. But then Toni Storm beat her back, and she's disappeared since the beginning of March in Revolution, which one of the best women's matches of the year. Despite there's been a lot of good women's matches this year, but hey, she doesn't even interact with Mercedes. None of this stuff was going on. It feels like a tremendous missed opportunity from this division. But now we see what we all expected when the Women's Own Heart Cup tournament came about. We saw that very clearly what they were heading towards was Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné. That's now official. They couldn't wait to get that graphic up after Toni Storm retained over Mina Shirakawa. So we're basically at the point of, okay, Mercedes hasn't lost. She's facing Toni Storm. Toni Storm's the best woman in this company. She's been the best woman in this company for a couple of years since the Timeless gimmick came about. Longest reigning women's champion in that at least from the women's world championship perspective, most title runs as women's world champion. Toni Storm is fantastic. Let's get real. Toni Storm is the best character that they got on the women's side. But now they basically have narrowed this thing down to two women's matches. Hey, the TBS title couldn't even get on. I think if my memory serves me correctly, the TBS title couldn't even get on the first All In. Because I think it was either Jake Cargill or Chris Statlander. I can't even remember. But then you had that random 4-way with that Saraya randomly won. Now Saraya's not even there. But this is a disaster, man. You're probably looking at one women's match if they throw together any other match, it's not going to mean anything because, you got your two champions who are clearly head and shoulder and been presented head and shoulders above, in the positions of, hey, and, I get it from a business perspective. These are the two most over women in your company, and you need a big match to kind of sell this show outside of Hangman and Moxley for the world title. And at another time, and if with a better build, this could probably main event a pay-per-view. It's not going to main event All In. Let's get real. It's not happening. But I have a theory as to why they went this route. And we knew that this was very, very possible when this tournament came about a month ago. It started at Dynasty, and now we've been going through this for basically about a month and a half. The theory that I have, Evolution had been rumored. A lot of people are saying, yeah, hey, that's why maybe they should go and, put that match in the main event. Listen, that's not going to change anything. What I do think is going on here is, I think Tony Khan looked at the situation and he panicked because the ticket sales for All In Texas are not going well. I think they just crossed 15,000 in what's about a 35,000, 40,000 seat venue in a baseball stadium in Globe Life Field. He panicked. I think he panicked. I honest to God think that really what was initially the plan was Mercedes Moné versus Athena. I really think that was the case. But because Athena has not been presented at all on television, they decided, hey, let's just get these two on television. It's a dream match. Let's throw them in this tournament. Because why else would you eat? There was no, everybody was hoping and praying that Athena would come back, but that she was tossed aside so unceremoniously at the end of that. She hasn't been seen on television since that match in Boston a month ago. I think Tony Khan just looked at this whole thing and looked at the landscape, and a lot of this is his own damn fault because of the way he's booked Mercedes Moné, whether it's through creative control or whether it's through his mind or whatever, and seen, hey, I've got no credible women that could really sell me tickets in a women's championship match to be a prominent top level match on this show for a stadium, and we're not selling tickets. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put the biggest match that I possibly can, which is the two biggest women in this company, even if this is rushed, even if Mercedes is not as big as she thinks she is. Toni Storm, I think, will absolutely eat Mercedes for lunch in this feud. Mercedes is not a good promo. Toni is a much better promo, even if her character is goofy. And I think they rushed this, and I think they panicked, and I think they were like, we need to do the biggest match possible. And even if these are the two biggest stars, and I totally understand that, but there's nobody who is even going to, and all due respect to Jamie Hayter. Jamie Hayter, if booked a lot better since she came back last year in London, could have possibly been in this spot. But there was no reason for me to believe, as much as I love Jamie to death, there was no reason for me to believe that Jamie Hayter was going to win this Owen Hart Cup tournament. Because, and then everybody's saying, oh, Athena would get involved and interfere. You're not gonna bastardize the Owen Hart Cup tournament final with a bunch of interference. You're not doing that, because there's too much on the line to just completely do that. You can do a screwy finish and cheat, but having people get involved and interfere in the match was just not going to cut it. So really what I think happened is somewhere around, February, March, right around Revolution, because the ticket sales started, I think, either late last year or early this year. Toni saw the early ticket returns. They were not good. And he's like, okay, I'm paying Mercedes all this money. Toni's the best female character that I have. I got to put these two in the same match, even if Mercedes has the TBS title, because nothing else is going to really sell tickets for this show. Nothing. So listen, I get it. I understand it from a business perspective. That doesn't mean that this is going to work out for this place. Because, yeah, you may get a short-term return for this show at All In Texas. You may do that. But beyond that, what's your end game here? Mercedes wins. The only person that I can honestly put on my bingo card that honestly has a realistic shot and makes a ton of sense to make it feel like a satisfying conclusion is Willow Nightingale. That is the only person. Chris Statlander's lost to Mercedes twice. Clean as a sheet. Jamie Hayter, they tossed her aside unceremoniously, and maybe they revisit that down the road, but it's going to take a lot to get you invested back in. And I've got some opinions on Jamie Hayter because I think she's been dicked around with way too much in this division since she came back that I'm just really pissed off about it. Athena. The fuck's going on with Athena? She's got maybe one of the best title runs in this company, and she's being tucked away on a show where nobody watches. There's like 10 people who watch Ring of Honor. So what's the end game here? I don't know. You've got your short-term return, and it'll probably help you sell some tickets. These are two of the best women. It's a legitimate dream match. I love both of these women from an in-ring perspective. My perception about Mercedes has changed a little bit because I think she's gotten exposed without the WWE machine behind her in terms of her promo ability and in terms of her lack of charisma. Like, she carries herself well, but in terms of, talking, she's not great. She's not a great character, and she really hasn't evolved. It's a problem. Toni Storm at least changed her gimmick and got to a timeless gimmick, which has really worked for her and has gotten her connected with the audience. So there's nobody else in this division. They had nobody else. They had nowhere else to go. So they put the two champions against one another. You did the biggest match you possibly could. You could have very easily built to something and made this way bigger than it was. But instead, you're microwaving this, and you're literally 6-7 weeks to build. You're throwing your two biggest women in a match. And for what? It's going to give you a payoff. Mercedes is going to probably have like 17 different titles by the end of the summer. And then what happens? There's nobody in this division outside of Willow Nightingale that I feel really confident in that's going to that's capable of beating either one of these people. And Mercedes is going to win the championship in my eyes at All In. She's going to be a double champion. I'd be stunned if Toni Storm wins this match. Because why else are you doing it? Toni Storm being the champion beyond this, and it's just like, this is the problem that I have. They've beaten everybody they possibly can. So the only solution you had was putting them in the same match. That's on Tony Khan. That's on Tony Khan. That's because he gives creative to all these people. Mercedes won't lose. It's just a huge problem and a huge issue I have with this. So really disappointing, but I'm not surprised. And like I said, that's the theory that I have. They will never admit it, But I think that really there has to be some credence and some, credibility to this idea because, like, why else would you go away? Because it seemed like, months ago that this was that Athena was prominently featured in a lot of the promotion for All in Texas, even as the Ring of Honor champion, because she's from Dallas. It completely gone away from that. Athena's nowhere to be found. What are we doing? What are we doing? Anyway, thanks so much. I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.